The lights in the great meeting hall of Nexus Prime Station flickered as another wave of panic swept through the crowd. Hundreds of alien beings from across the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, their voices creating a noise that sounded like fear itself. Some had tentacles that shook, others had fur that stood on end, and many kept looking over their shoulders as if death might walk through the doors at any moment. Ambassador Vexitar of the Helix Empire stood at the center podium, his blue skin pale with worry. His forearms moved in quick gestures as he spoke to the crowd. "The reports are confirmed," he said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. 3 Void Stalker ships have been detected in human space. The hunt has begun. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Several smaller aliens fainted and had to be carried out by medical teams. The Void Stalkers were not just predators. They were nightmares made real, creatures that had wiped entire civilizations from existence without leaving a trace of their passing. In the back of the hall, a small group of humans sat quietly. They did not gasp or faint. They simply listened and took notes on their datapads. Captain Jake Morrison, a tall man with brown hair and calm eyes, leaned forward in his chair. Next to him sat Dr. Lisa Carter, a woman with short red hair who kept writing down everything she heard. "How long do you think the humans have?" asked Senator Kildos, a reptilian being whose scales had turned gray with fear. "A week? Maybe 2 if they run fast enough?" Ambassador Vexitar shook his head sadly. "The longest any species has lasted against the Void Stalkers was 18 days. That was the warrior race of Keth Prime. They had weapons that could destroy planets. It did not matter. The Stalkers still found them." Captain Morrison stood up. His movement caught the attention of many aliens in the hall. Some looked at him with pity, others with the kind of look people give to someone who is about to die. "Excuse me," he said in a clear voice. "Could you tell us more about these Void Stalkers?" The hall became even more quiet. Ambassador Vexitar stared at the human with surprise. "You want to know about them? Captain, surely it would be better to use your time to evacuate your people." "We need information," Morrison replied calmly. "How can we protect our colonies if we don't understand what we're facing?" Dr. Carter stood up next to him. "Any data you have could help us prepare a defense." A sound like nervous laughter came from somewhere in the crowd. Defense against Void Stalkers was like trying to stop a star from exploding with a piece of paper. But the humans seemed serious about their request. Ambassador Vexitar activated a holographic display above the podium. The image that appeared made many aliens in the hall close their eyes or look away. It showed a creature that seemed to be made of living shadow with burning red eyes and claws that looked like they could cut through space itself. "The Void Stalkers come from the deepest parts of our galaxy," Vexitar explained. "They are not just hunters. They are terror made flesh. They can walk through walls like they are not there. They can appear and disappear without warning. They feed on fear itself, growing stronger with every moment of panic they create." Dr. Carter wrote rapidly on her datapad. "How big are they?" she asked. "Each one stands 3 meters tall," came the reply. "But size does not matter with these creatures. They exist partly in our dimension and partly in another. Physical attacks pass right through them unless they choose to become solid." Captain Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "What about their ships? How do they travel?" Several aliens in the crowd made sounds of disbelief. The humans were asking technical questions about creatures that would soon hunt them down like animals. It seemed almost insulting to the memory of the billions who had died before them. "Their ships are alive," Vexitar continued, though his voice showed he thought this information was useless. "They grow their vessels from some kind of organic material we have never been able to identify. The ships can phase between dimensions, just like their masters." At that moment, a communication officer rushed into the hall. His face was pale as he whispered something into Ambassador Vexitar's ear. The ambassador's expression became even more grim. "I have just received word," Vexitar announced to the hall. 3 human colonies have gone silent. New Denver, New Phoenix, and Terra Nova have stopped all communications. Long-range sensors detect Void Stalker energy signatures in all 3 systems. The hall erupted in noise again. This time it was not just fear, but also sadness. Another species was about to join the long list of those who had vanished from the galaxy forever. Captain Morrison received a message on his personal communicator. He read it quickly, then looked at Dr. Carter. Admiral Wells wants us back at the ship immediately. We're being ordered to investigate the silent colonies. Dr. Carter gathered her notes. How long until we can leave? The shuttle is waiting for us now, Morrison replied. As the humans prepared to leave, Ambassador Vextar called out to them. Captain Morrison, please reconsider. There is no shame in retreat when facing the impossible. Your species is young and has much to offer the galaxy. Do not throw away millions of lives for pride. Morrison paused at the door of the hall. He turned back to face the crowd of aliens, all watching him with eyes full of pity and fear. Thank you for the information, Ambassador. But humans don't run from fights we haven't tried to win yet. With that, the humans left the hall. Behind them, the aliens began to place bets on how long humanity would survive. The longest estimate was 20 days. Most thought it would be less than a week. None of them considered the possibility that the humans might actually fight back and win. The human ship Horizon dropped out of hyperspace near New Denver Colony with a flash of blue light. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, looking at the screens that showed the planet below. Everything looked normal from space. The colony buildings were still there, the power plants were running, and the communication towers stood tall against the sky. Any signs of life? Morrison asked his communications officer. Lieutenant Ben Harper shook his head. Nothing, sir. No radio signals, no movement on the surface, no response to our calls. It's like everyone just vanished. Dr. Lisa Carter studied the sensor readings on her screen. That's strange. The life support systems are all working. The air is clean, the temperature is normal, and there's no damage to any buildings. Whatever happened here, it wasn't an attack with weapons. Commander Ryan Phillips, the ship's second in command, walked over to join them. He was a big man with black hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. Permission to take a landing party down to investigate, sir. Morrison nodded. Take Dr. Carter and a security team. But be careful, we still don't know what we're dealing with. An hour later, the shuttle landed in the main square of New Denver Colony. Commander Phillips stepped out first, followed by Dr. Carter and 6 security officers, including Sergeant Maria Santos. The colony was built like a small town, with houses and shops arranged around a central area where people would normally be walking and talking. But the streets were empty. This gives me a bad feeling, muttered Private Danny Cohen, a young soldier, who carried a heavy rifle. Where is everybody? Dr. Carter pulled out a small device that beeped as she pointed it around the area. I'm reading traces of human DNA everywhere, but no actual people. It's like they were here one moment and gone the next. Sergeant Santos led her team toward the largest building in the colony. It was the community center where people would go for meetings and social events. The doors were open and chairs were arranged as if people had been having a meeting when something interrupted them. Look at this, Phillips called out. He was standing next to a table where someone had been eating dinner. The food was still warm and a cup of coffee was half full. Whatever happened here, it happened fast. Dr. Carter scanned the room with her instruments. I'm detecting some kind of energy residue. It's not like anything in our databases. The readings are very strange, almost like the energy exists in 2 places at once. As they explored the colony, the team found more signs that people had left quickly. Doors were open, lights were on, and personal belongings were scattered around as if people had dropped everything and run. But there were no signs of where they had gone. Private Cohen was checking a house near the edge of the colony when he stopped suddenly. Did anyone else see that? He asked over his radio. See what? Sergeant Santos replied. I thought I saw a shadow move between the buildings, but there's nothing there that could make a shadow like that. Dr. Carter looked up from her scanner. I'm getting some very unusual readings. The energy signature is getting stronger. The temperature around them began to drop. Their breath started to show in the air, and frost appeared on the windows of nearby buildings. The shadows between the buildings seemed to grow darker and deeper. Something's coming, Philip said quietly. He raised his weapon and signaled for his team to spread out. That's when they saw it. A shape began to form in the shadows between two buildings. At first it looked like smoke or fog, but then it became solid. The creature that stepped into the light was 3 meters tall and looked like it was made of living darkness. Its body seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow, and 2 burning red eyes stared at the humans with ancient hunger. The Void Stalker had found them. Most species would have screamed and run at this point. The creature expected fear, panic, and the delicious terror that it fed upon. Instead, the humans did something completely unexpected. "Well, that's interesting," Dr. Carter said calmly, pointing her scanner at the creature. "The energy readings are off the charts." Commander Phillips raised his rifle and aimed it at the stalker. "Everyone stay calm. We knew this might happen." "The crew." Void Stalker made a sound like wind howling through empty space. It had hunted across thousands of worlds and had never encountered prey that didn't immediately flee in terror. These strange creatures were actually studying it and preparing to fight. The creature decided to show them why every other species feared the Void Stalkers. It phased through the wall of a nearby building, becoming incorporeal like a ghost. The humans watched as it moved through solid matter as if it wasn't there. "Dimensional phasing," Dr. Carter noted, still taking readings. "Fascinating. It can shift between our reality and another dimension at will." The stalker reappeared behind Private Cohen, expecting the young human to freeze with fear. Instead, Cohen spun around and fired his rifle at the creature. The energy bolts passed through the phased stalker harmlessly, but Cohen didn't panic. "It can't be solid and phased at the same time," he called out. "When it attacks, it has to become solid." The Void Stalker was confused. No prey had ever analyzed it during combat before. It solidified to strike at Cohen with its massive claws, but the human was ready. Cohen pulled a grenade from his belt and threw it directly at the creature. The explosion knocked the stalker backward and left burn marks on its dark skin. For the first time in its long existence, the creature felt pain from prey that fought back effectively. The stalker retreated into the shadows, not because it was defeated, but because it was bewildered. These humans had done something impossible. They had heard it, studied it, and shown no fear. As the creature vanished into another dimension, Dr. Carter finished recording her data. "Did everyone get that? We just learned more about Void Stalkers in 5 minutes than the rest of the galaxy has in centuries." Commander Phillips lowered his weapon. "Let's get back to the ship. We need to report this to the captain immediately." Their shuttle lifted off from New Denver Colony. None of the humans realized they had just changed the course of galactic history. For the first time ever, a Void Stalker had retreated from its prey. The hunt was about to become something entirely different. News of the encounter at New Denver Colony spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On Nexus Prime Station, Ambassador Vexitar stared at the report with his mouth open. The humans had not only survived first contact with a Void Stalker, they had actually wounded it and made it retreat. "This is impossible," he said to his aide. "No species has ever heard a Void Stalker before. The humans must be lying." But the sensor data from their ship proved everything. The energy readings, the dimensional phase patterns, and even recordings of the creature's retreat were all real. Across the galaxy, alien leaders held emergency meetings to discuss what this might mean. Meanwhile, Admiral Patricia Wells sat in her office at Earth Command reading the same report. She was a gray-haired woman who had spent 30 years in the human fleet, but she had never seen anything like this. Captain Morrison's team had given humanity its first real hope of survival. "Get me a direct line to all fleet commanders," she ordered her communication officer. "We're going to war." Within hours, 3 human battle groups were moving toward the remaining silent colonies. Each group carried new weapons based on Dr. Carter's research. If the Void Stalkers could phase between dimensions, then humans would find ways to fight creatures that existed in 2 places at once. Captain Morrison led his strike force toward New Phoenix Colony, the second settlement that had gone quiet. This time he brought 2 more ships with him, the Defiance and the Liberty. All 3 vessels carried experimental weapons designed to disrupt dimensional phasing. "What do you think we'll find there?" asked Dr. Carter as they approached the planet. She had spent the entire journey studying the data from their first encounter. I don't think the colonists ran away, Morrison replied. Humans don't abandon their homes without a fight. He was right. When the ships arrived at New Phoenix, they found something that amazed them. The colony was not empty. Instead, it had been turned into a fortress. Barricades surrounded every building, and strange devices were mounted on rooftops throughout the settlement. New Phoenix to approaching ships came a voice over the radio. This is Mayor Kate Sullivan. Are you here to help us kill these shadow monsters? Commander Phillips laughed with relief. They're alive and fighting back. The shuttle landed in the middle of New Phoenix Colony, where Mayor Sullivan waited with a group of colonists. She was a tough-looking woman with dirt on her clothes and determination in her eyes. Next to her stood Pete Murphy, the colony's chief engineer, who had grease stains on his hands and a big smile on his face. We've been expecting these Void stalkers to come back, Sullivan explained as she led the military team through the colony. After the first attack, we decided we weren't going to run. This is our home. Pete Murphy pointed to the devices mounted around the settlement. We took all our mining equipment and turned it into weapons. These electromagnetic field generators can disrupt their phasing ability. When they try to walk through walls, they get a nasty surprise. Dr. Carter examined one of the improvised weapons. This is brilliant. You've created a dimensional anchor system. How did you know this would work? We didn't, Sullivan admitted. But we figured anything that can exist in 2 dimensions at once might have trouble with strong magnetic fields. So we built these and waited. Captain Morrison looked around at the prepared defenses. The colonists had turned their entire settlement into a trap. Electric nets hung between buildings, motion sensors covered every approach, and modified mining. Lasers were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. How many stalkers have you seen? He asked. 3 so far, Murphy replied. They keep testing our defenses, but they haven't made a full attack yet. I think they're confused because we're not running away screaming. That's when alarms began to sound throughout the colony. Sergeant Santos, who had come down with the landing party, grabbed her rifle and looked around. Contact. Multiple contacts approaching from the north. 5 Void stalkers materialized from the shadows at the edge of the colony. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. But as they approached the first line of defenses, something went wrong. The lead stalker tried to phase through a building, but the electromagnetic field generators activated. The creature became solid against its will and slammed into the wall with a loud crash. The other stalkers stopped in surprise. Now, shouted Mayor Sullivan. The colonists activated their trap. Electric nets fell from overhead, powered by the colony's main generator. Mining lasers fired from hidden positions, creating beams of energy that could cut through rock. The stalkers found themselves caught in a web of weapons designed specifically to fight creatures that could phase between dimensions. But the humans weren't finished. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez, who had come down with the military team, led a squad of colonists in a flanking maneuver. They moved through tunnels that Murphy's people had dug under the colony, coming up behind the confused stalkers. Remember, they have to be solid to attack, Rodriguez called out. When they solidify, hit them with everything you have. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of fleeing in terror, humans were hunting the hunters. They used teamwork, tactics, and improvised weapons to turn the stalkers' own abilities against them. Private Cohen, who had been at New Denver, threw another grenade at a stalker that was trying to retreat. These things aren't so scary when you fight back, he said with a grin. The Void stalkers, for the first time in their ancient existence, felt fear. Real, genuine terror at being hunted by creatures they had expected to be easy prey. 2 of them fell to the humans' coordinated attacks, while the other 3 escaped by fleeing to another dimension. As the dust settled, Mayor Sullivan looked around at her people. Some were injured, but they were all alive and victorious. Well, she said, I guess we showed them that humans don't go quietly. Dr. Carter was already scanning the bodies of the fallen stalkers with her instruments. This is incredible data. We're learning so much about how they work. Captain Morrison sent a message back to Admiral Wells. New Phoenix colony secured. Colonists have developed effective countermeasures. 2 enemy casualties, 0 human casualties. Requesting immediate reinforcement and supply drops. The message that went out to the galaxy was simple but shocking. Humans had not just survived another Void Stalker attack. They had won a battle and killed 2 of the creatures. On Nexus Prime Station, Ambassador Vextar read the report 3 times before he believed it. Across the galaxy, other species began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the humans might actually survive this hunt. The Void Stalkers, meanwhile, began to understand that they were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted. 3 days after the battle at New Phoenix Colony, Dr. Lisa Carter made a discovery that would change everything. Working with Pete Murphy and his engineering team, she had managed to capture a living Void Stalker using a modified electromagnetic containment field. The creature floated in the middle of a specially built cage made of energy beams and magnetic fields. It could not phase through the barriers and it could not escape. For the first time in galactic history, a Void Stalker was held prisoner by its intended prey. "The readings are incredible," Dr. Carter said as she studied her instruments. "This creature exists in our dimension and another one at the same time. That's how it can walk through walls." Captain Morrison stood outside the containment field, looking at their captive. The Void Stalker was smaller than the others they had fought, but its red eyes still burned with ancient intelligence. "Can it communicate?" "I think so," Carter replied. "The brain scans show complex thought patterns. It's definitely intelligent, maybe more than we realized." Engineer Murphy scratched his head as he looked at the creature. "So if it's smart, why does it hunt people? Can't it find some other way to live?" Dr. Carter activated a telepathic probe device that she had borrowed from the ship's medical bay. The machine was designed to help doctors communicate with alien patients who couldn't speak human languages. She pointed it at the Void Stalker and began to receive mental images. What she saw made her step backward in surprise. "What is it?" Morrison asked, seeing her shocked expression. "I'm getting images from its mind," she said softly. "This creature is in pain. Constant, terrible pain." The mental connection grew stronger, and suddenly Dr. Carter could hear thoughts that were not her own. The voice in her mind was deep and filled with sadness. "I am Kethvar the Endless," the voice said, "and I am so very tired of hunting." Morrison looked at the containment field. "It's talking to you?" Dr. Carter nodded, her eyes wide with amazement. "Kethvar, can you tell me why your people hunt other species?" The mental images that came next were like watching a terrible movie. Dr. Carter saw the Void Stalker's home dimension, a place of beautiful floating cities and peaceful beings who once lived in harmony. But something had gone wrong. Their reality was collapsing, falling apart like a house made of sand. "We were not always hunters," Kethvar's voice echoed in her mind. "Long ago we fed on the energy of stars and the movement of planets. We were shepherds of space itself, helping young worlds grow and prosper." More images flowed through the connection. Dr. Carter saw Void Stalkers helping other species, sharing knowledge, and working together to build wonders across the galaxy. But then came the great disaster. "Our dimension began to die," Kethvar continued. "We tried to save it, but we failed. We were forced to flee into your reality, but we cannot fully exist here. We are caught between 2 worlds, never truly alive. In either." Dr. Carter felt the creature's pain through the telepathic link. It was like a constant hunger that could never be satisfied, a thirst that no amount of water could quench. "To survive in your dimension, we must feed on the life energy of intelligent beings," Kethvar explained. "The fear and terror that sentient creatures produce when they face death gives us the power to remain solid in your reality." Murphy frowned as he listened to the translation. "So they have to hunt people, or they die?" "It's worse than that," Dr. Carter said, tears forming in her eyes. "Every time they hunt, every life they take, it brings them shame and pain. They hate what they've become, but they can't stop." Captain Morrison felt a strange mix of anger and sympathy. "How many species have you destroyed?" Through the mental link, Kethvar showed them images of dozens of worlds that had fallen silent, entire civilizations that had been hunted to extinction to feed the Stalker's desperate need for survival energy. Each hunt breaks our hearts, Kethvar said. But we are too afraid of death to stop. We have become the very monsters we once fought against. Dr. Carter suddenly understood something important. That's why you can't hunt humans effectively. You feed on fear, but humans don't stay afraid. We get angry instead. She was right. The brain scans showed that when other species encountered void stalkers, their minds produced overwhelming terror that the creatures could feed on. But human brains work differently. When humans face something scary, they produced adrenaline and fighting chemicals instead of pure fear. Your species is impossible, Kethvar said, and there was almost amusement in his mental voice. When we appear before other beings, they freeze with terror. When we appear before humans, they start taking notes and making plans to fight us. Lieutenant Ben Harper, who had been listening to the conversation, stepped forward. What if we could find another way for you to survive? Something that doesn't require hunting people? The Void Stalker was quiet for a long moment. In all our centuries of hunting, no species has ever offered to help us. They only run or fight. You humans are the first to ask why we hunt instead of simply trying to stop us. Dr. Carter began to form an idea. The energy you need, it comes from the electrical activity in intelligent brains, right? What if we could create that same type of energy artificially? You would do that? Kethvar asked. You would help the creatures that came to hunt you? Captain Morrison looked at his team, then back at the containment field. If it means no more species have to die, then yes, we'll try to help you find another way. For the first time in centuries, Kethvar felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. My people will not believe this, he said. But I will tell them about the strange species that offers friendship to its enemies. Dr. Carter began making notes for her report to Admiral Wells. They had learned something incredible about the galaxy's most feared predators. The Void Stalkers weren't evil monsters. They were refugees, driven to terrible acts by desperation and the need to survive. We're going to need every scientist on Earth working on this, she told Morrison. If we can find a way to help them, we might just save both our species. Outside the containment field, Kethvar watched the humans work together to solve the problem of his people's survival. No other species had ever tried to understand the Void Stalkers. They had only seen monsters to be feared. But humans saw something different. They saw people in need of help. 6 months after the first Void Stalker attack, Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the human flagship Unity, watching something that the galaxy thought was impossible. Through the main window, she could see 3 massive Void Stalker ships floating peacefully next to the human fleet. The energy generators are working perfectly, Dr. Lisa Carter reported from her station. We're producing enough synthetic life energy to feed a dozen stalker clans. The solution had taken months to develop. Human scientists working with refugee experts from previously hunted worlds had created machines that could produce the same type of energy that Void Stalkers needed to survive. The devices used controlled fusion reactions to create electrical patterns that matched intelligent brain activity. Captain Jake Morrison walked over to join them at the main viewing screen. Any word from Kethvar about how his people are adjusting? He says they're amazed. Carter replied with a smile. For the first time in centuries, they can feed without killing anyone. Some of the older stalkers are crying tears of relief. The breakthrough had not been easy. Many humans had questioned why they should help creatures that had come to hunt them. Some alien species had been angry that humans were making friends with the galaxy's most feared predators. But Admiral Wells had made the final decision. If we can turn enemies into allies, she had said, then we make the galaxy safer for everyone. Lieutenant Ben Harper appeared on the bridge carrying a report. Admiral, the Void Stalker matriarch Celthus has arrived. She's requesting permission to come aboard for the treaty signing. Wells nodded. Tell her she's welcome. And Harper, make sure all weapons are powered down. We want our guests to feel safe. An hour later, the meeting room aboard the Unity was filled with beings that would have been impossible to imagine just months before. Human officers sat at the same table as towering Void Stalkers, their red eyes no longer burning with hunger but glowing softly with curiosity. Matriarch Celthus was the largest void stalker anyone had ever seen. She stood 4 meters tall, and her shadow-like body seemed to contain entire galaxies of swirling darkness. When she spoke, her voice was like wind through ancient mountains. "Admiral Wells," she said, her words coming through a translation device. "My people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You have given us something we thought was lost forever." "What's that?" Wells asked. "The chance to be something other than monsters." Dr. Carter sat next to Keithvar, who had become the unofficial ambassador between the two species. The captured stalker had chosen to stay with the humans even after he could have returned to his people. He said he wanted to learn more about the strange species that offered friendship to their enemies. "The treaty is simple," Admiral Wells explained as she placed the documents on the table. "We provide your people with the energy they need to survive. In return, you help us protect human space from other threats." Matriarch Celthus examined the papers with interest. "You trust us to guard the very people we once hunted?" "Yes," Wells replied without hesitation. "We believe people can change when they're given the chance." The signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime Station, Ambassador Vextar watched with his mouth open as the galaxy's most feared predators signed a peace treaty with their former prey. Other alien species gathered around viewing screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. "The Void Stalkers have agreed to become protectors of human space," the news reporter announced. "In exchange, humanity will provide them with an artificial energy source that eliminates their need to hunt intelligent life." After the signing, there was a celebration aboard the Unity. Human crew members and Void Stalkers shared the same spaces, though it took some getting used to. Sergeant Maria Santos found herself talking to a young stalker named Jektul, who was fascinated by human games. "So you move these pieces around the board to capture the other player's king?" Jektul asked, studying a chess set. "That's right," Santos replied. "It's about strategy and thinking ahead." "We had similar games in our old dimension," Jektul said sadly, "but we lost so much when our world died." Santos moved a chess piece. "Maybe you can create new games now. Better ones." The young stalker's eyes brightened. "Yes. Games instead of hunts. Building instead of destroying." Across the ship, similar conversations were happening. Commander Ryan Phillips found himself explaining human engineering to a stalker engineer who was amazed by how humans built things to last instead of just to kill. Dr. Carter was learning about void stalker science, which could help humanity understand dimensional travel. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Wells told Captain Morrison as they watched humans and stalkers working together. "Think about what we can accomplish when we combine human determination with their knowledge of other dimensions." Morrison nodded. "The galaxy is going to be a very different place." He was right. Within a year, joint human-stalker colonies were being established throughout human space. The stalkers used their dimensional abilities to help humans explore new worlds, while humans provided the stalkers with technology and friendship they had never known. Children from both species played together in colony parks. Human kids taught stalker younglings about games and laughter, while young stalkers showed human children how to see the beauty in shadows and darkness. The most amazing sight was the joint research stations where human scientists and stalker scholars worked side by side. They developed new technologies that could help other refugee species find homes in this dimension. They created medical devices that could heal wounds across dimensional barriers. Other alien species slowly began to approach the human-stalker alliance. If humans could make friends with the galaxy's most feared predators, maybe they could be trusted with other diplomatic challenges. "The humans have done something we all thought was impossible," Ambassador Vextar reported to the Galactic Council. "They turned the greatest threat in our galaxy into our greatest protectors." On the newest joint colony, called Hope Station, Admiral Wells stood with Matriarch Celthus watching their children play together under the light of 3 suns. A human girl was teaching a young stalker how to fly a kite, while stalker children showed human kids how to make shadows dance on walls. "Your species has taught mine something valuable," Celthus said to Wells. "Fear is not the only way to survive. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is offer trust to someone who doesn't deserve it." Wells smiled as she watched a group of children, both human and stalker, working together to build a treehouse. Maybe that's what makes us human. We're too stubborn to accept that anyone is beyond help. The galaxy's most feared predators had found something better than hunting. They had found friendship with the only species brave enough to offer it, and the universe was better for it.